Since I'm talking about slowing down, I figured I would just record this in slow motion.
That's enough of that. I don't want to create a nightmare scenario for editing, Ash, so normal speech pattern it is. Well, sure, this could technically apply to slowing down on your projects and working on them more methodically, giving them the right attention, not starting so close to a deadline that you're cramming in a bunch of work in a short period of time. ADHD baddies who thrive under Ren Fair or Con Crunch, I'm calling you and myself out, okay? So instead of diving into why my brain thrives when getting close to deadlines, I actually want to talk about the social implications. We live in a culture that glamorizes productivity, hustling, making sure you're not missing out on opportunities, getting the absolute best education you can, climbing the corporate ladder, villainizing rest as laziness, yada yada. You get the point. I'm not here to talk statistics and studies, but really just what I've observed, be that conversations with folks in my community or who I interact with in real life, what I see scroll across my feed, and my own personal experience and well-being, particularly what I've learned about my overall happiness. I've been out of college a little over a decade, so I can't say what the current high schoolers and younger of today are being told and prepared for, but I recall as early as 5th grade being impressed upon the importance of going to college, and frankly, it being the only path that was really presented to me as an option for my life. I went because I was supposed to go, because I was told for years and years how amazing college is and the promises of getting a job that come with getting a degree. And while I was very fortunate to turn an internship during my last semester into a job after graduating, I quickly learned that the degree wasn't as much of a magic ticket as everyone claimed it would be. My peers and I who did find work were getting lowballed for salaries. Despite being told our degree was supposed to give us that extra edge, it was common to settle for about 50% of what we expected to receive if we wanted employment at all. It taught us that the degree was the bare minimum expectation. Depending on the field, it didn't even matter what your degree was in. As long as that minimum of a bachelor's was scribbled somewhere on your resume, were you worth them taking a glance in your direction. Many of us were not fortunate enough to have money put aside for us. And even though I worked as soon as I could legally get a job, though also before that through things like babysitting, what I could make was a pittance compared to the cost of tuition. So getting these low salary offers meant that keeping your head above water financially was near, if not impossible, to keep up with the predatory student loans we were required to take in order to attend. Despite the aspects of what I liked about college, I know I can't be the only one who, if they could go back in time, would maybe choose not to go because of the financial burden that still dangles above my head. And nowadays, the job market is even more abysmal, and the cost of things higher than ever. And I don't blame anyone for thinking college might not be worth it if they don't receive a significant amount of scholarship money or have that in an account for them to tap into, for the fear that they can never actually pay it back. To get to the point of me bringing college into this conversation, you not only have to do the hard work that is getting your degree, but you likely have to do much, much more. Whether that's building a portfolio if you're in an art field, the internships, taking on jobs so you can have years of experience in entry-level jobs, the ones you aren't supposed to have job experience in yet, seem to require becoming more well-rounded in additional areas of study and really doing whatever you can to give you that extra edge above your peers who are entering the same job market you are, so you stand out. You have to submit to hustle culture if you want the outcome of entering a career at all. To get an additional perspective, I talked to someone who works in higher education so I could get some of their thoughts on the topic. They mentioned they are frequently thinking about the what is expected of you type of direction, and how while they're happy in a job they hope will be permanent, They worry they are not, quote, living up to their potential due to a lifetime of being told and internalizing they should want to be the best. For academics, there is an environment of humble bragging about how much you work, how many hours you put into the lab, etc. And while they do love their work and teaching, they don't want their career to be everything they are. They do think that we need to shift how we talk about college. While they believe it is worth it, the framing needs to change. Quote, college isn't just about learning science or math or graphic design. I think it is also about learning to think critically, engage in a community, and yes, learn job-specific skills. But I do think that college is not the right choice for everyone, and there needs to be a shift in how college versus non-college educated people are being talked about, the whole skilled versus unskilled labor type of thing. I think about these ideas a lot in the context of the history of science/academia. Because the research/work was being done by rich, mostly white, mostly men, who basically had the free time to pursue academics and intellectual ideas because of their privileges at the time. So really it's just late-stage capitalism hell that has us feeling this way. If we had the freedom to pursue the art and science and intellectual curiosity things we loved without the burden of surviving, things would be so different. End quote. Another person, who I'll refer to as the initials AH, shared that many of us naturally gravitate towards certain fields, and while we need a mix of everything for a healthy society, some jobs are deemed more worthy of pay than others, causing people to end up in misaligned situations that end up harming themselves, and by extension, those around them. And what is deemed worthy shifts. While they were in college, it was be an engineer, and then that field became oversaturated. Quote, with the rise of AI, I don't know how anyone is expected to guess what the career landscape is going to look like even 5 years from now. End quote. As an additional perspective, who I'll refer to as the initials LL, they referenced AH's point about mainstream fields, with noting the exploration of a vast variety of career paths seems to be a huge part of education that's missing. While trade schools are a good start, even those options feel limited. While resources may be sparse or non-existent in public education, in the age of the internet, there should be more encouragement to engage with the topics that interest you, be that watching YouTube videos about it, pursuing finding your own resources to enter the industry. For them, college was worth it, forcing them to try new things, expand social circles and network, and understand how they work with people. However, people can go down that path through multiple avenues, and no one should feel obligated to pick a specific path. In their high school, they also had a lot of great electives, but they came with the connotation of easy A's or stupid kid courses like wood shop, jewelry shop, metal shop, all being ones they took. As the token Asian, they experienced being told the honors kids were taking art history, statistics, debate, coding, and were they sure they didn't want to do one of those? The additions of these voices and perspectives really cement for me that there is and can be a lot of merit in pursuing education. But the way we talk about it and approach it is not a one-size-fits-all. There is so much financial burden placed upon us we have to weigh alongside our own happiness and fulfillment in life. As we were growing up, we were asked again and again what we wanted to be. If you think back all the times you were asked this question, how often did you have the same answer? Did it change over the years or stay consistent? While I do have a self-described shit memory, I struggle to come up with a single name of someone I know who had the same answer when they were a kid that they decided to jump into as a young adult. I think about this and then I think about post-high school. Whether or not you went to college or a technical school or just sort of went where the vibes took you, there was this expectation that where you landed was the field you were going to grow your career in. A neat little ladder, if you will. Maybe you'd find your way into a company in an entry-level position and work your way up in that one space, Or maybe you change companies every few years to get a better role and salary with the goal of hitting that sweet, sweet exec position at the top. But what if your interests change? What if you start out in a field you thought you loved and find out it's not the right fit for you? What if you're put on a plan by your company so that you can grow into a higher position, but you settled into a mid-level role you are genuinely happy in and don't want the extra stress and burden climbing that ladder would place on you? What if you decide to leave your field, even if it's entirely outside what your training and education has been thus far? The thing is, all of those scenarios are very taboo. I think it's because we have this perception of continual growth being good, and you can't grow if you're jumping around. Society questions if you've actually found success when you break out of that mold, and while it's easy to say, don't be influenced by others, it's more the burden and conditioning of our society than any one individual sharing that sentiment with you. If you live in the good old US of A, you are acutely aware that for the majority of people, healthcare is tied to your employment. Since the script of this video is shaping up much longer than I anticipated, as well as the fact that I have another platform I already share a ton of health-related topics on, I went ahead and wrote a companion piece to this video, digging a bit further into the health aspect that I shared on my Substack, Alive and Unwell. If you want a deeper dive into this health-related hellscape, there is a link in my description to the article I wrote. The key points I do want you to take away that I expand on in more detail in the article is how here in America, the culture of work is absolutely bonkers. While we are far from the only country who has the 40-hour work week as standard, we do stand well at the bottom of the list of having a healthy, pun intended, work-life balance. The amount of time we get off is a joke, whether for sick days or PTO, and have some of the worst coverage for maternity/paternity leave and short and long-term disability. Healthcare in this country is enormously expensive. So either you get really lucky where you have a great position with health benefits that allow your personal healthcare costs to be minimal, especially if you are relatively healthy, or you can work a job with benefits that are even worse than if you self-pay without insurance. And if you get too sick to work, your options are self-pay, or if the government deems you disabled enough, you become locked in this financial prison where they will give you money, but you can only have so much money in your account at a given time before you become ineligible. With the cost of everything these days, it can be near impossible to find a job that supports you and pays for the necessities. This also means that people have to basically push through any type of illness, be that acute or chronic, or find a workplace that has accommodations that actually work for their needs. And another big consequence of all of this is burnout. There is no option in the way most of these jobs are structured to recover and come in fresh. And this level of burnout can take a lot of time to recover from. Being conditioned to go at 400% speed is the norm, despite our bodies literally screaming at us that it shouldn't be. And while I'm wrapping up this portion of the video, remember to go to my description if you want a more thorough dive into this topic. Yes, it is. The reason I brought all of these things up thus far is to talk about how we are shaped early on to define happiness and success. And while there are people out here who all of those things do work for, this video is really intended to help you think critically on if and how it serves you. I had a great sociology professor who did a fun exercise with us one day that really stuck with me all these years. So I'm gonna try to do that here as best I can. So he told us to take our hand and put it on our face, making sure you can still see through your fingers. He said, "This is society, the lens or perspective in which you view everything through. The study of sociology is pulling that hand back from your face so you can examine it objectively," which is how I want you to think about things here. Before I go any further with my thoughts, what is your first gut reaction to the question, what does success look like? Is your answer a number? Maybe it's a salary or a number of followers? Is it a position? I just want you to take a second, or pause if you need to come up with that quick answer. Whatever that answer is, I now want you to question it. Why is that your answer? Is that definition of success one you resonate with, or is it one you've been told you should be chasing after? I do invite you to continue to sit with this question when you're done watching, as I really think it's the crux of why I wanted to make this video in the first place. To take in as many of the pieces that I've talked about as possible, here's how it's looked in my life. I spent nearly a decade in a corporate job based on the degree path I followed. I started as an intern, which grew into a fellowship and continued to morph until I was a creative director. Somehow I managed to work my way up to the top of the ladder, which looked so good from the outside, and it was easy to say what my position was with pride. But in the last year plus of having that position, it was anything but good. I was constantly stressed. I was given unreasonable expectations. The creative part of my job barely existed at all. I held on to what I could, but it was more out of a desperation to feel okay enough to continue showing up each day. I found what I had described as success, but really all it was burnout, sugar-coated with a fancy title. When I say getting laid off was the best thing that could have happened to me, I really, truly mean it. I would have stuck around miserable had I not been, because walking away would have felt like a failure to all I had accomplished. Plus, the fact of being chronically ill and needing doctor's appointments that I knew I couldn't afford without a job or insurance. While I don't wish that fear that comes along with being laid off on anyone, the reason I'm sitting here creating today is due to what followed from it. It took me a little over a year to recover from the burnout that position caused, and there are still some things nearly 2 years out that I'm still working through. Between severance, side gigs, and my partner's job, there wasn't an immediate financial urgency for me to jump right back into something full-time, and to be quite frank, I did apply for probably over 100 jobs and barely heard a peep back. Over the year and a half prior to the layoff, I had been slowly getting back into photography. The half of my degree I basically abandoned in favor of the other half, which was video. That and the community I was slowly building around myself were the main things that gave me life outside my job. And with a nudge of encouragement from my partner, I decided to pursue it more seriously. A few months after my layoff, I launched my photo business, and now at that same interval of about a year and a half post-layoff, I find myself never wanting to go back because of all I've learned about myself since I've been given the opportunity to breathe. Some days I can perform at 400% and others at 0 or -% due to various health and neurodivergent reasons. I thrive with routine, but specifically the ones I set, which also gives me permission to break it when it doesn't serve me because I also crave novelty. Being creative isn't just something I like doing, it's my lifeline. It's the thing that makes me feel okay, fulfilled, like my life has meaning. In the beginning, I was operating like I had at my job, trying to optimize every minute of every day, and my partner had to keep reminding me to stop living life like I was in a race because it was only hurting me. So, how do you do it? I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm an expert on how to do something like this. I'm not saying you should follow the path I follow. We are all very different people who have very different wants, needs, etc. What I will do is give you some things to mull on for yourself, define what slowing down and success mean and look like for you in your life. I'll start with my own experience and then pose some questions you can take with you. First, a self-care routine. There's a lot of things I don't want to do that I know are helpful for my body. Self-care isn't all bubble baths and face masks, though of course it can include those things, but really it's prioritizing your body's needs. For me, this means exercise. Mine is all dance-based to keep it fun since it's often the last thing I want to do. It means a fairly strict sleep hygiene because I know that my depressive episodes will flare up if I don't. It means making sure I'm getting enough food in my body. And it means taking a break and resting when I find myself frustrated, when I can't just do the thing or it's not turning out right. These are all things I naturally struggle with, but if I don't do them, my mental and physical health suffer for it. Second, finding the right work-life balance. I know for myself that a full-time position is something I'm not interested in. While I want to say never again, I don't know if that'll change in the future, and it's important for me to never really deal in absolutes. Without working, I don't have money. Without money, I not only can't support myself or my pets, I also can't just enjoy the occasional treat, like getting a nice dinner, going to an event, buying an item on my wish list. So figuring out how I can bring work into my life in a way that supports me but doesn't become most of my identity. Third, balancing my energy spent. If you are in the chronic illness space, you've likely heard the term spoonie before, but if you're not familiar with it, it's this concept of starting your day with a certain number of spoons. Kind of think of it like an energy meter. As you do tasks, showering, errands, chores, etc., you take away spoons. When you're at 0 spoons is when you don't have anything left in the tank for the day. When I overextend, I end up with negative spoons. So not only am I burning myself out for that day, I am taking spoons from the next day, so I will start with less and get exhausted faster. And fourth, prioritizing creativity. Like I mentioned earlier, being creative is intrinsically tied to who I am, where I find value and fulfillment. If the work I'm doing isn't primarily creative in nature, I do suffer for it. If I don't do projects just for fun as well, I suffer for that too. While I'm sure there is more I could go on about, I don't necessarily want to share all of my inner thoughts on camera today. The main theme here is around gaining a better self-awareness and building from there. I have some questions that may help if you recognize this is something that would be of value to do in your own life. And personally, I do think it's an exercise that is worth doing for everyone and multiple times, especially as you and your environments change. First, what is fulfilling you? Do you feel fulfillment at your job? Is it when you care for a loved one, or is it when you're creative like me? Think about how you can bring that into your life more without overextending yourself. 2, what is draining you? Are you so exhausted after your shift you go home and sleep until you have to wake up and repeat? Do you have a relationship, and it doesn't have to be a romantic one, that you don't necessarily want to cut off but want to lessen in some way? Consider how you can reduce some of those drains in your life. 3, what does success look like? I already asked you to mull on this one, so I won't go into it much more, but really consider this to start as more of a what success in life looks like, and then kind of break it down from there. 4, is your current path sustainable? Are you dealing with burnout? Is your mental or physical health suffering? Are other parts of your life that you care about falling off because of how much investment you put into another part? And 5, what is one thing you can do to improve your life right now? This can be adding something in or taking something out. Change seldom happens all at once, but instead it's often small intentional actions. This can be adjusting your mindset and challenging your gut reaction to things, and maybe recognizing you might need mental health support in order to help you with that shift. This is not an all-inclusive list, and as much as this phrase feels very corporate, really think of them more as some thought starters. Once you start to dig in, you'll likely be faced with much more personal and maybe hard to answer questions. The only wrong answer to any of these, to me, is the ones where you lie to yourself about what is and is not working for you. Because at the end of the day, you are responsible for your own happiness in life, even when it doesn't feel that way and seems impossible. The art of slowing down doesn't necessarily mean you live a slower life, even though that can be the conclusion you come to. It's really about taking that pause to stop, reflect, and evaluate if the path you're on is the one you want to be on. From there, you can continue to live your life the same way, or you have the opportunity to figure out how you can take the steps towards the path you want to pursue. I will say, this topic morphed a lot as I wrote up my script and talked to other people who lended their perspective for me to share within it. And the runtime is probably a bit longer than I envisioned it being, but I do think it's really important to talk about a lot of the factors that lead into the feelings of misalignment and burnout that feel like an epidemic these days. How we got ourselves into this mess due to societal pressures, things we've internalized and thought were the correct path, even if they weren't the right path for us. I hope I've given you something to think about in this video, and if so, please give this video a like and subscribe as I continue to find my voice here. Until the next one, my friends. My cat sneezed. Not dark for all of a sudden, I think. Oh well. I'm waiting for my dog to sit. He's got his little tappy tappies. There we go. Of course, my necklace got stuck. Oh my god, my shirt got stuck in my necklace. Honestly impressive.